Greetings to those who watch below. As always, it's time to say thank you to Lisa Watts, Steffi Ray, Ghost City Shelton, and Lefty Kim for being those who dwell below. An exclusive membership to the channel that gets you shoutouts at the start of every video. Now, a lot of our stories to do with the paranormal are based on those stories from people who just happen to have an experience. But what about those people that go out searching for ghosts? Well, it's time to check out some true, creepy paranormal investigation stories. My Last Investigation with My Team by Nephylim. My team were contacted by two sisters in their late 20s as they were experiencing some disturbing activity in the house they had recently started renting. Sherry sounded very emotional on the phone, saying that she could feel something touching her, grabbing her in awkward places, and pulling her hair whilst on the phone to us. They were a little dubious about meeting us at their home at first, which I completely understood. So, we arranged to meet at a public place for an interview. They knew very little about the house or the previous occupant, but gave us the rental agent's number so we could contact her for some details. Unfortunately, she was a total skeptic, and actually accused us of trying to take advantage of the two young women. She went on quite a tirade, and even accused us of trying to devalue the property so we could purchase it at a low value. She refused to give us the owner's number, and told us that should she see us around her office, or should we make contact with her again, she would call the police and have us arrested. So, we respected her wishes and hung up. Originally, our full team was meant to conduct the investigation, but on the day we could not get hold of Liza and her husband Wynard, which was strange, as they had committed and had never missed an investigation before. We later found out that Liza had been rushed to the hospital, but I won't go into that. Suffice to say that she was fine. Our first mistake was going ahead with the investigation without our full team. I felt this put us off balance, and I had a very strong feeling that we should have called it off. Our second mistake was not trusting my feelings. I had performed my ritual of protection before picking Nate up, but he had not. I told him I would wait, but we were running late and he just wanted to get on the road. That was mistake number 3. We arrived just before sunset to find them standing beside their car. Nikki was very agitated, and Sherry looked like a deer caught in the headlights. I could tell they both just wanted to get out of there. Sherry gave us the keys, and they left. Upon entering the house, I immediately had this overwhelming sense of gloom, and all the hairs on my neck and arms were tingling. The air seemed thick and uncomfortable. During our cursory sweep, it felt like we were being watched. Nate's mood over this time changed. At first he was, as usual, quite excited about the investigation, but while setting up, he seemed to sink into a depression of sorts. I asked him if he wanted to call it a night and come back another day when the full team could be present, but he refused. He said he was just feeling a bit down, and that he was okay. Nate suggested that we each take a bedroom and begin an EVP session. I was a little worried about us separating. I must admit that this house had freaked me out, but he was adamant that we separate. Against my better judgment, which if you're counting is mistake number 4, I went along with it. I took Sherry's room and he went into Nikki's. We agreed to do the solo EVPs and returned to the living room in an hour. I was 20 minutes into my session when the door suddenly burst open. Nate was standing in the doorway, white as a sheet and sweating. I asked him what had happened, and he just shook his head and said that he had to leave. I gathered my equipment and followed him to the living room. He started packing up our equipment with shaking hands. Again, I asked him what had happened in the room. He said he didn't want to talk about it now, and that he just wanted to go home. I took him home and didn't hear from him for just over a week. I took the keys back the next day, and in the week they called us to thank us for whatever we did, as they hadn't had any further experiences, and their house felt much lighter. As I didn't want to freak them out, I didn't tell them what happened. I was just happy they were at ease in their own home. After several days, Nate called me and asked me to come over as he needed to talk. I said sure, and was there within the hour. Upon entering his house, I got the same feeling I got at the sister's place, and I immediately knew that the entity had latched onto him. We sat outside, and he told me what happened in the room. He had started his EVP session, and 5 minutes into it, he had felt a hand grab his shoulder, and swears he heard the voice of his son say "Daddy." He said that although the room was dark, he was able to make out the furniture, but as soon as he turned around, it was like he was blind. Everything went pitch black, and he felt like he was falling. He couldn't shake the hand on his shoulder, and according to him, he had called out to me a number of times. He came to, lying on the floor, got up, and ran into the room to find me. Since then, his family has been experiencing things in his house. All his houseplants withered and died in the space of a week. His microwave caught fire while they were sleeping. His son was having terrible nightmares, and his wife had been groped while in the shower, leaving bruises on her. Eventually, he had told his wife to go stay at her parents'. He had tried multiple cleansings, but nothing seemed to get rid of the entity. As he's a Christian, I suggested that he call his priest to bless the house, and offered that he could come stay at my place for the night. He didn't want to, as he was scared of bringing whatever was attached with him. He slept in his car that night. The priest came by the next day and blessed the property. It seems to have worked, as there have been no further occurrences. Pere Cheney, Grayling, Michigan, by V. Schultz, 21. My nephew, who is handicapped and in a wheelchair, talked his mother and 2 aunts into taking him ghost hunting. We started with tours, then graduated to overnight lockdowns, like Mansfield State Prison and West VA Prison, just to name a few, and have been perfecting our techniques with various equipment. So, being all residents or former residents of northern Michigan, we decided to conduct a hunt at Pere Cheney. We had planned to conduct the hunt at night, but thought it wiser to try and find the place during the day, since it's remote and hard to find. So, the 3 sisters set off, and of course took our equipment with us. We had just purchased the new Ghostbox Ovilus Free. After many wrong turns and a stroke of luck, we found the place. We got out the car and turned on the equipment, and immediately started getting words, which, after some question and answer sessions, got some very interesting replies, including thermal temperature drops and flashing lights. Several names kept coming up of Murphy and Pat, and both confirmed that they were the ones conducting the conversations with us. We were warned by Murphy that the rabbits that had been left on the grave sites were evil, and told about paranormal accidents that happened in the area. The area during the day was somewhat peaceful, and as we explored the grave sites, we were saddened to see how many children were there. It was tragic to see the amount of destruction that vandals had done to the grave sites. A couple of hours into the hunt, Murphy warned us to run, to leave, that there were demons there, that the place was evil. We asked why and who, but never got a response. But after the 3rd warning, we left. As we were leaving, I started taking pictures, and this is what we got. Everyone has seen something different in it. What do you see? At about 11 PM, we arrived back there with our nephew and proceeded to get all the equipment out. The ghost box, the EVP recorder, scatterlights, headlamps, etc. It was very creepy, especially given the fact that the location is isolated and there's only one way in and out. It's just a 2-track, barely large enough for 1 car. In fact, we never really got very far from the car. We were all on edge and leery. We've been on some very active overnight lockdowns, and it has never felt this oppressive. My sister was working the scatterlight, and saw areas where the lights were completely absorbed into black holes. We tried to take pictures, but they didn't show up well on the camera. The strangest part was when my other sister, armed with the camera, and I, armed with the ghost box, stepped out the car and tried to take steps on the actual cemetery property. We felt like a layer was there that we could not cross. We felt this every time we tried to walk on cemetery land, so stayed close to the car and communicated again with Murphy. There was just a feeling of heaviness, too much silence, an overall feeling of being watched. It was a very short experience, since Murphy kept telling us to run, evil, and to leave. Needless to say, we left. We conducted our cleansing ceremony, and away we went. We believe in respectful hunting, and usually do tobacco offerings before we begin, where we set the rules and always do a cleansing ceremony when we are completely off any property we are hunting on. This was an interesting experience. I would certainly go back and hunt the area, but I think we'll do it at dusk next time. The Ouija House by Razorback95. For the last month and a half, my friends and I have been investigating a house that my friends and I stumbled upon that was truly a masterful piece of nature reclaiming the home. This is the story of what my collection of friends and myself have experienced. Let's rewind 6 months to early 2016. My friend Em and I are cruising around different places in Indiana, looking at the beauty of old abandoned properties being reclaimed by Mother Nature. We find this little house out on the outskirts, right between Indianapolis and Mooresville. Only one other house was on the road, so we stop and get out. We walk up to the house, and my buddy M notices an entrance to the basement, so he hops down into the basement. Then, silence overcomes both of us. He found a skull in the middle of a pentacle. We were both very shaken by what we had just found, but we decided to keep looking through the house. We walk in and look around, and the inside is completely vandalized. Pentagrams spray painted everywhere, the number of the beast all over, and proclamations of Hail Satan. So, my friend climbs up to the second story and notices a patio on the second floor. He walks towards it, and right there on the patio, a Ouija board has been painted onto it. I hear footsteps and ask M if he's walking. He replies no, so we decide to quickly get out. Nothing could be found outside the property to explain the footsteps. In August this year, my friend C wanted to go see the place after hearing both M and mine's story. We grudgingly agreed, but this time I was going to take my spirit box system to try and make contact. What follows next still baffles and haunts me to this day. I start the spirit box up and ask, is there anything here that wants to communicate? I quickly get a reply of yes. I ask the entity who he is, to which it replies, evil. I then ask it, did you say evil? Just so I can further prove it's talking back to me. The spirit replies to the question with, demon. We ask, does it want us to leave? To which it replies, no, you're next. I get my Bible out and ask, if you're a demon, this book must make you angry, right? Then, we all hear an audible hiss, and immediately after, I feel a hand around my throat, gradually trying to choke me. My friends C and M both see a tall black figure rapidly moving towards the car, unaware of me being gradually choked. I managed to speak one word, go. We ran and drove to a nearby gas station. As we leave the property, I feel the grip release immediately. When we got to the gas station, I get out, and C looks at me and immediately informs me that I have a handprint around my neck. Stairway to Shadow Cloud by JustAnotherPerson. Ever since my first ghost encounter, I've been so interested in ghost investigations. Now, please note that I'm only 17, so not old enough to have my own real professional investigation team, but my friends and I go on little adventures in our apartment buildings. The encounter I had happened recently. It was my friend Ali's 17th birthday. I was the first person to arrive to her party. It was still about half an hour before our other friends would arrive, so we decided to watch TV. Both Ali and I love to watch the Travel Channel, because it has our favourite TV show, Ghost Adventures. The story takes place in Traverse City, Michigan, my old hometown. In Traverse City, we have this old state hospital that was shut down many years ago and turned into apartments. There are still renovations going on today. As we were watching TV, Ali suddenly turned to me and said, "Hey, we should do our own little investigation." I agreed, because I knew it'd be fun, and we didn't think we would actually get anything major. Ali's apartment is actually haunted. She lives there with her mum, and both of them have got an activity. I've listened to previous EVP recordings that they have done, and they have a ghost named Chris, who lives in their apartment room. According to my friend, Chris likes to stay in her room, rattling the blinds when she tries to sleep. Ali's even seen Chris. He appears as a white mist floating near the ceiling, and she told me that Chris even showed up as a transparent figure in the doorway to the bathroom. Anyway, back to the encounter. The rest of our friends had shown up, and we had our little party. Ali and I told them that we wanted to go investigate the other floors of the building. We waited until it got a little darker outside to see if the spirits would be a little more active. We collected our gear: one camcorder, our phone cameras, a camera with a thermal option, and an EVP recorder. Ali's mum is also into ghost investigating, so she let us use a couple of things in our item list that she owned. Since there was activity in the apartment room we were in, and stuff moved around a lot, we took pictures before we left. Then, we set out on our own ghost adventure. Since we were a team of 4, we broke into teams of 2. 2 of us in the hallways, 2 of us in the stairways. We would text each other if any major activity was experienced. My friend Reilly and I took the stairways, Ali and Amanda the halls. Now this is where it gets freaky. Reilly has had her fair share of encounters with spirits. She has an evil spirit that lives in her house, but that's another story. Reilly and I were quietly stepping up the stairs, our cameras out. Nothing was happening, so we stopped and started asking questions like, "Is there anyone here with us?" And, "If you're here, what's your name?" We waited for a few minutes. Then my EMF reader started to beep. We were starting to get activity. I remember showing Reilly the EMF, and then she pointed behind me. I turned, and on the staircase above us, a dark cloud was resting there, almost shadow-like. We knew there was no one else with us, and Ali and Amanda were in the hallways. I decided to text Ali to come to the stairwell. I explained to her what happened, but the dark shadow cloud had disappeared. We listened to the EVPs, and found out there's a spirit who hangs out in the stairway, called Jeremy. His voice was a raspy whisper, but he sounded young, like a man in his early 20s. Our small group decided to walk further up the stairs, me in the front with the EMF reader up. We wanted to find Jeremy again, so we could talk to him some more. Soon, the reader began beeping and we stopped, quickly turning on our EVP and asking questions. All of a sudden, we were hit with a sudden chill. This happened during the summer with 90-degree weather, and it was a pretty hot day. But we did check the windows that were in the area of our stairwell to see if there was any wind blowing through any cracks, but they were all tightly sealed. Then, we saw the dark shadow cloud again. I started to get a bad feeling, like something wasn't right with the cloud. The shadow cloud started to descend toward us, and I told everyone we had to get out of there now. My mind was telling me to get everyone away from this cloud as safely as possible. We all quickly started to descend to Ali's floor. I was ahead of our group again, when all of a sudden, I felt Reilly trying to grab onto me. I almost tumbled forward, but luckily I was on the last step, so I kept my balance. I turned to her and asked what was wrong, and she said that her legs had given out on her, like something grabbed them and took all the energy. We had to stand and wait, while she sat and regained her energy. Ali had the camera rolling this whole time, and we found that the dark shadow cloud we saw was targeting Reilly. Reilly had sat down on the floor, and the cloud was all around her. It was very cold, and it was making the EMF go crazy to the point where I had to turn it off. I turned on the EVP and asked questions. "Are you Jeremy?" I waited. Did you attack my friend? Can she please have her energy back so she can leave? After 5 minutes of waiting, Riley was able to stand again. The cloud had slowly disappeared, and the area had started to warm up again. We made our way back to Ali's apartment, wary of Riley, in case she collapsed again. We listened to the EVP, and the only thing the shadow cloud answered was my question of why did you attack my friend? It said it wanted us to leave. It sounded really mean and angry at us. I don't know if the spirit was Jeremy, the one who answered us before. I do not know why the spirit has specifically attacked Riley. Alright guys, thank you ever so much for listening to today's video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to share, comment and subscribe to the channel. Also, leave a thumbs up. And if you are subscribed, hit the notification bell. That way you will know when the next video becomes available. So, until next time, sleep tight.